So let's review the coding challenge. First of all, beginners, very quickly. So because I know that you know how to solve these problems, I would like to focus on the style. Yeah, let's see if everyone follow an appropriate style, or if there's anything we can change in our approach. Question number one, we want to see if a given athlete is a world champion and if she's a woman or not, right? We got a couple of utility functions at the bottom, so the only thing we need to do is return is world champion, and because we need the combination of both, right? And is woman, something like that. Yeah, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Does it work? Yes. So let me have a look to your suggestions. So yes, Ahmed, Bilal, all good for Esteban, Edward, Kelly, Catherine. You have 2 spaces here. Okay, but yeah, all good. Katerina, that's interesting. So even though that's absolutely correct, I hope we agree this is a bit overcomplicated, right? So she says, all right, if he's world champion and woman, return true. Else, implicit else, return false. That's fine. However, I hope you can see, Katerina, that in writing we don't need that, right? So we can simplify the expression a bit. Good for Jack, Sonia, Kiran, Sev. Oh, Kibon. If I copy that and I paste it and I evaluate it, will we get any warning? Can anyone see any problem with Kibon approach? He doesn't have an argument. All right, so what do you propose? To do that?
No, to pass the...
All right. If it's not obvious, let's evaluate it. First of all, it works, but look, this is why looking after elegance is important. Sonia. Not only Sonia. Look. Is world champion is defined but never used. That's just smelly, guys. If I delete it, nothing will change. It will work. In other words, the algorithm offers us for free these 2 functions. We are supposed to invoke them, to execute them, because otherwise we need to fight with the implementation details. I don't care about the details of the athlete object. I don't care at all. I have 2 functions. Let's simply invoke them. That's it. Yeah. So that was the main issue with Kibon approach, but all good apart from that. Any questions? No? Cool. Question number 2. Oh, dates. I'm sure you love dates, right? That's probably the most controversial, at least in my opinion, part of JavaScript. Because dates were introduced many years ago, and apparently whoever introduced that went out and had some drinks because it's completely inconsistent. As an example, when we talk about day numbers in JavaScript, they start at 1. Yeah, the first day of the month is number 1. However, when talking about months, the first month of the year is not 1, it's 0. That doesn't really make any sense. It's pointless. It's pointless. And that will be an incredible situation if it will have happened today. But again, that's legacy, and we need to deal with that. All right, so we got first of all the argument. So how would you call the argument, guys? I can show it to you again on the left hand side. String. Oh, I love that, data string. If I call it a string, we're technically speaking correct because that's a string, but we are not sharing any context about the data we're passing. If we call it date, it works on the other way around. We are informing the user that's a date, but I will personally get the feeling this is an object, this is a date object. It's not, it's a string. So I like to do something like that. It's a date, but be careful, that's a string. So if you have to manipulate it, be careful. And now, we need to return the day of the month, I believe, right? So 19, 1. We could, I'll tell you something, there are two ways to solve it. We could, let me do it in a natural way to me, and then let's hack around a bit. So my favorite proposal will be to return new date. That's the way you create a new date object, passing the string. And now, how do we get the day of that particular date string? Get date, which is completely confusing.
Sorry, one question. New is something that's part of the
JavaScript. Yeah, that's a constructor. We don't use that keyword often, but we sometimes use it. This has a lot to do with classes, constructors, and all these things. Yeah. When talking about promises, probably next month, we'll talk about the new keyword as well. So I think that will work. It does work. And again, that's probably my favorite approach. But let me show you a different approach. I'm going to manipulate the date string. So I'm going to create a variable, date tokens equals date string dot split. Look at what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create an array of 3 elements. Yeah? And then if I return date tokens of 2, will this work or not? Does anyone think that won't work?
What does the hyphen do inside
The hyphen, we explained that on Wednesday. So that will chop, that will create an array with 3 elements, 0, 1, and 2. So that hyphen will be the element separating the array elements. Hyphen what? So Katerina thinks it will work. Sonia agrees. Does anyone disagree? Say it again? Okay, I think I do disagree. Let's have a look. Yes, I'm right. Can you tell me why you are wrong, guys? Ah, that's the key. Katerina got it. Katerina got it. We are returning the last part of the string. In other words, we are returning a string. However, we are comparing with what? With a number. Even though the first one looks the same, look at the second one. It's not the same. String versus number. How do we transform a string into a number? To number? I don't think so. String.number parsing. Okay, parsing. Fair enough. Parse int. Let's try that. So parse int will hopefully do the magic. And that's true. I want you to tell me at least, or if not, I'll tell you at least 2 alternatives. A natural one, as Esteban is talking to himself, number. Yeah? And that's another classic job interview question. Number versus parse int. Which one should we use and why? Number. Why? Easier to understand.
Even to specify if it has to be an integer, a number could be any number.
I mean, they're equivalent in the majority of the cases like this one, so we can use either. But in reality, they work differently. Let me show you an example. If I do, imagine that we are working with CSS, and at some point we have that, a variable called let pixel, 12 pixels. So if I create a variable size equals 12 pixels, number size will return what? Wrong. Wrong. Not a number. Correct, Katerina. N-A-N. Number will say, hey, wait a minute. What are you talking about? I don't really know what are you trying to do, but I'm unable to transform 12 pixels into any meaningful number. However, if we do parse int, what will that return? It will return 12. So if we want to extract the number 12 to add some mathematical operations, parse int will do the magic.
There was a question
Yep.
to me about this.
Okay. Yeah, the first one, you're right. So in other words, parse int is way more powerful because number, first of all, will say, hey, do I have an actual number or a string representing a number? Yes. If so, do it. If not, give up. However, parse int will do, no, I need to try to find the number out of that expression. Yeah, that's the difference. Parse int is way more powerful. So, back to the original question, which one will you use? Right, that's wrong. Generally speaking, we should avoid using parse int because it's more powerful, yes, true, but that's not for free. So running parse int is way slower. It takes a lot of time compared to number. Number is super fast. Yeah? Of course, if you need to do it once, there will be no visual difference. But thinking on the scalability of your app, yeah, in the long term, we should use number. Unless, of course, we need to do something very exotic. So that will be the only case, the only scenario where parsing makes sense. But, say it again? Well, if you know that you have a complex string and you have to get the number out of it. But again, this is very controversial because that only works if the number is at the beginning. So for instance, if you get that, that won't work at all, right? So parsing is okay, but only in some very particular scenarios where the actual number is in front of the string. Yeah? On any other scenario, and that will be 99.9% of the time, please use number because it's faster. Cool. So if we do that, it will work. Yeah? And now I'd like to show you a third approach that because of a reason tends to be ignored even for senior developers, but I find it extremely sexy. So if you got your string, there is a very clever way to transform it into a number. It's doing that, plus. Then you got your fancy number. It works. Yeah? Parse int, don't do it. Number, all good. Plus, very clever. Yeah? So these are the three alternatives. But still, back to the approach. I find this approach very weird, right? I mean, if I had to implement that, I will use the new date, get date, what we explained at the beginning, right? Can I bring it back? Yeah, so that's clearly the most elegant, yeah? The most elegant approach. That's the my fair style. So what do you do here? So starting from the top. So you see Ahmed, he did the same thing. The only difference is he created a variable and then he, in a new line, returning the result. So that's all good. That's all good, of course. Same for...
Sorry, get date is also defined in JavaScript?
Yeah, of course. That's a built-in method in JavaScript. Yeah. So Bilal, the same thing. Same for Esteban. Very happy to see that indentation is good. Semicolons are good. All good for Jack. All good for Katerina. Good. Yeah. Great. Fantastic. Nothing to complain about, guys. Well done. Question. Well, anything you want to talk about this particular question? No? Cool. So let's jump to question number 3. Ooh. Reverse planets. Interesting. We got a string and we want to return an array with the individual characters reversed. Again, I'm going to solve the problem using 2 different approaches. First of all, the official one, because this is what the test is asking for, right? So even though if I had to solve that problem by myself, I will never ever use for off, because I want to prove I read instructions, I'm going to use for off. Yeah? So then in a minute we'll see who read instructions and who didn't read instructions. So because we read instructions, I like to do something. First of all, argument name. How would you call the argument name, guys? Planet. Fair enough. Yeah, planet. I like it. And then, I'm going to create a variable, an array of, I don't know, to be honest, planet.
You should have planets in the bracket with the S.
Here,
Yeah.
planets, all right, that's controversial.
And now planets.
So this is planets in plural. How many planets Mercury are? 1. How many planets Mars are? 1. Should be planet or planets? In singular. If I have planets, I will immediately think we receive an array of planets. Wrong. All right, so I got my argument planet, and then because we need to return an array, you agree on that, an array of characters, I like to create a variable called characters. I'm not very opinionated. You can call it planet characters, planet keys, yeah, whatever. Planet names, wrong, because this is not a list of planet names. This is individual characters, right? So the default value, you set as an array, an empty array for now. Eventually, I will return it, and that's very peculiar in my coding style. I don't tend to follow the algorithms following a chronological or sequential order. That's not my style. Why? Because I prefer to do divide and conquer. I focus first of all on the big picture. So I know I need to create an array, and I know I'll return it. Yeah? The structure, the skeleton. And then I can drill down, I can narrow the issue into the chicken, yeah? Which is the loop. So the loop will look something like that. For, I need to create a variable, I like to call it character, yeah, for consistency reasons with my syntax, of planet. So of will work in the following way. It will go through each individual character, each individual letter, and it will save it into the character variable. Does it make sense? All right, we'll at some point do a workshop to explain the differences between for in and for off. One works with iterable variables, another one works with enumerable. The stress goes on the second syllable, right? Okay, so now we want to add the character to the array of characters. How do we do that? Push. Okay. Characters dot push character. Interesting.
I do something different.
What did you do?
I do dot and shift.
Interesting. Push versus and shift. Let's ignore Jack for the time being. Let's assume he's wrong.
You need to add a dot reverse.
So essentially you are talking about the same thing. You're talking about different ways of solving the same problem. So let's evaluate that. It doesn't work, right? And it doesn't work because the array is on the other way around. So now we need to find out how to reverse the array, right? So we can do 2 things. We can follow Ahmed style. Yeah, before returning the array, you reverse it. Let's see if it works. That's fine, it works. So that's, to me, that's a completely valid solution. Or the alternative. Imagine that I don't know how to do it, so I'm going to watch myself on a selfish way, learning how to add elements at the beginning of the array. Happen if we want to add our new fruit not at the end of the array, but at the beginning, on top, on the first position. Instead of push, we can use a new method called unshift, and then the name of the fruit that we want to add. Oh, so Jack was right. There is an alternative, which is instead of reversing the array, we can simply use unshift. We'll add the element on top of the array. Yeah? Let's see if it works. It will work, fantastic, no problem at all. So that's all good. And that's the academical approach. That's the way we prove we read instructions and all good, right? However, without reading these instructions, if I had to return that, look at how simple this is. Return, planet dot split, give me all the individual characters, dot reverse. Easy, done. Yeah? That's to me the canonical way to solve the problem. Very easy, right? Split and then reverse. That's it. Any questions so far? No? All right, so what you did here? Question number 3. So Ahmed, you see, this is what he explained, which is completely correct. I may have some important concerns about the readability of the algorithm. However, first of all, reversed. That's not really true, because we are not reversing anything as part of the array. We are reversing it at the time of returning, but the array itself has the characters on the correct order. So that's a bit controversial. And then the second one, world of planet. You get my point, right? That's not a wall. That could be A, B, C, D, E, not a wall as such. But apart from the readability, technically speaking, is great. So Bilal was way more conservative with the naming conventions, right? You can see he talked about string, character, which is good. It's good, no problem at all. I'm just missing the semantics. It's not giving me any feedback about what sort of data I'm dealing with. A string, but what sort of a string? Humans, porn actors, I don't know, right? And then Esteban, you see, I really like what Esteban did. That looks really, really cool. Planet, I like it. Letter, nice. And sieve, so that looks really good to me, to be honest. Edward is following Bilal style, right? On top of that, can anyone spot any elegance issue with Edward approach? What's wrong with return, Catherine? Yeah, indentation is wrong, Edward. Indentation should be here. Yeah? If that was Python, the exercise would have failed. Yeah? Thankfully, in JavaScript it still works, but you got a warning. Kelly, planet. You see, so Kelly, she used reversed, same as Ahmed, I believe, but in that case, I don't have any big concern, because actually she's reversing the array. You see, she's using unshift, so if I print the value of reverse, it's actually the planet name reversed, right? So I find it quite readable, technically speaking. And Catherine, planets, right? Planets is not a good name, Catherine. If I have a variable called planets, I may expect Mars, Earth, all these things, right? It's not planets, it's a list of characters. And also be careful with the double space. Yeah? Katerina, right? So again, that's the best.
I didn't read.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? So to me, That's my favorite approach. However, in that particular case, we were expected to do something else. For Jack, I think he messed around a bit, right? Array planets, again, that's not what we got here. But yeah, all good apart from that. Sonia, planet, values, and Sif, yeah, not bad at all. For Kiran, the same thing, good. For Sev, yeah, fantastic, all good. And again, keep on being a bit conservative. String doesn't tell me anything about the algorithm. But all good, guys. I'm very happy that everyone managed to solve the problem. So let me quickly jump to question number 4. Everyone knows how to do that already, right? Does anyone has any question about? No? Let's just skip it, right? Otherwise we'll run out of time. Then let's review what you did quickly. So Ahmed using backticks, all good. Same for Bilal. You know, everyone did the same thing, right? Which is fantastic. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. That's the only thing. You are right, Ahmed. So that spacing, I don't think should be there. It's a minor thing. But according to the coding guidelines, you shouldn't have any space surrounding your variables. That's the only thing. And question number 5, what we got here? That's a good one. Is it an object? Yes or no? So in JavaScript, that's another similar to dates. You remember dates? I told you they were a bit weird. So type checking in JavaScript is a bit scary as well, right? So is object. What's the argument name? It's more complicated actually. Do you have any proposal? If not, don't worry, because I'll go through your solutions in a minute. Objects in plural. So that gives me, okay, first of all, objects in plural, that's wrong. Because objects in plural gives me the feeling I got an array. I don't have any array of data. But even if I call it object, that's a classic issue. That's wrong. That's radically wrong. Why? Because we're assuming that our input is an object, which may be true here, but we're assuming this is an object.
Can we put input?
Input. So this.
Since we don't know what.
That's a good point. So that happens sometimes. Sometimes you don't really know the data you are dealing with. In that particular case, don't try to be too specific. Yeah. Don't try to call it Miley Circus or however she's named, right? So just do something. Leave it open. X input accepted. Yeah. If you cannot add any value, don't try. Leave it. Yeah. Leave it like that. And now, in theory, we could do type of as part of the training as well. Type of x equals what? Object. Object. And that should be okay in theory, but oh, what the hell? That's array. Why array is considered an object? I can spoil you what will happen on the 7th week of the bootcamp. The 7th week of the bootcamp, we'll talk about something very important called prototypal inheritance. At that time, in the middle of September, you will learn that in reality, everything in JavaScript is an object. Everything. That's why object checking is a bit confusing. But all right, but if everything is an object, I could understand that arrays are an object, but functions are not an object. So what's the criteria? That's very confusing. It is very confusing, I have to say. So we need to handle arrays in a different way. That will work if it's an object. So if it's an actual object, like the first case, it will return true. Fantastic. So we need to deal with that particular scenario. Thankfully, in modern JavaScript, and this is modern, there is a way to determine if something is an array. So we can do array.isArray. That's a new thing. Do you think that will work or not? Why not, Catherine?
Because we need to negate.
Correct, we need to negate it. So we'll say that X is an object if type of is object and is not an array. Have you seen the exclamation mark before? It negates the expression. If you find it complicated, you can do that as well. but I particularly prefer that for simplicity reasons. Yeah? If it's an object but not an array, then done. Here you go. It works. So what you did here, in your particular case, so all good for Ahmed, all good for Bilal. Yeah, everyone did the same, right? So that was easier than I thought, to be honest. Yeah, let's have a look to the naming conventions. So for instance, Ahmed, object, nah. Again, that's wrong, because we may not have an object, right? X, unlike Bilal. Object, wrong for Esteban. Argument, well, yeah, at least Jack is clearly telling me that he doesn't know what do we get, right? Why not? That's the best argument name I've ever seen. Cosa, fantastic. Kiran X, Katharina X, X, input, object, Catherine, not object, yeah. Word, not word. We may not have a word, right? We may have something else. Keyboard, A, yeah, I accept A as well, yeah. Cool, oh, good guys. Any questions about beginner, sorry? No? Cool, so we got literally 30 minutes to deal with intermediates. So, I'm going to skip some questions. For instance, say again? I don't want to do this, because if I do this, we'll consume the 30 minutes we have, right? That question was more complicated. That's about the average, yeah? So I prefer to do something a bit simpler. But if you want a hint, I hope you can see that this question in particular is good to play around parse int. I told you before, in Reddit you almost never use it. Here, that may be very useful. So if we got time, we'll come back to that one. But I like to do the second one because I believe it's simpler, right? So people still struggling with intermediate, which is normal at this stage of the journey, you may find more useful to focus on the simple questions first, right? Cool. Let's try to understand the problem. So we got a string of text, whatever it means, and then we need to identify how many vowels. A, E, I, O, U, yeah? Cool. Starting from that problem, you will see that my approach tends to be the same. I'm following the same pattern, the same strategy the majority of the time. So first of all, argument name. Word, no, disagree, this is not a word. String, yeah? I like to call it a string because, again, I don't have any clear clue about the data I'm receiving, right? So what I'll do is, first of all, string dot split, empty string. That's my first step on the majority of these exercises. Why? Because I need to check each individual character if it's a string or not, yeah? So I will create an array of individual letters. And then, I'm going to use something very sexy, which is reduce. That's the most powerful array method in JavaScript. It's part of the intermediate challenge. From now on, you may use it on every single question on intermediate and, of course, on expert. So reduce works in the following way. Have you done reduce on any workshop? Not yet, right? No. Okay, cool. So let's have a quick look about how reduce works. Reduce receives some arguments. The first one is, technically speaking, accumulator, which I hate as a variable name because it tells me nothing about what we are trying to do. We'll rename it later on, but for now, just for academic purposes, let's leave it as accumulator. The second argument is each individual element of our array. So how would you call to each individual element of the array? Letter, I like it. You can call it letter or character, yeah? But that will be A, C, B, H, whatever. And now, how reduce works? First of all, we have to provide, generally speaking, a default value for the accumulator. So if we want to count the number of vowels, what will be the default value? 0. I like that. 0. Yeah. It could be 1, 2, 3. We'll see, right? But by default, it's 0. And now, let's check if letter is a vowel or not. If look at what I'm doing. Before adding the condition here, so if it's a vowel, return what? True. No.
The number.
What's the number?
The letter.
No, that's not true. That's not true. The way it works is the accumulator will be the eventual value return. Could be 0, 1, 2, 3. So we need to return the
Accumulator plus 1.
I love it. Accumulator plus 1. Yes. If it's a vowel, increase the value, the counter. And what if not? Return what? What? False. No, wrong. We need to keep passing a number to the next iteration. 0, wrong. Yeah? Okay, let's play an example. I'll show you the solution. Now, if we got a consonant, I don't want to touch the counter. If it was 3, leave it as 3, right? Yeah. So I have a very, very favorite way to test that. So I'm sure everyone will understand it. Look, iteration, accumulator, letter. So let's go one by one. That will be particularly helpful on expert training, recursion. So iteration number 1. What's the value? Okay, we need a string, right? So string equals hello. Imagine this is the problem, right? We got that string. So iteration 1. What's the value of the accumulator? 0, correct. What's the value of letter? H, correct. What do we return? Why 1? 0, of course 0. Yeah, it is 0 because in here we're supposing that we are adding 1 if it's a vowel. Actually, we can do that now. How do we check if letter is a vowel or not? Letter equals 3 equals A or letter equals B. And what happens if we are looking for consonants? Oh well, E. Yeah, okay, so we can do that. We can do that. A, E, I, O, U, right? I'm not a big fan of that. That stressed me a lot. Right? Say it again? No, well, not really, but there is a very sexy way to do that. First of all, the sexy way, and then the super sexy way. So the sexy way is, look, we can do that. Oh, I didn't close it. A, E, O, U, and there's a new method in JavaScript called includes. You see the idea? If that array A, E, I, O, U includes my letter, then it's a vowel. And there is a super sexy way, even better. Instead of using an array, includes also works with a string. Look at how sexy this is. Solve it. You see? That's, to me, the smartest way. Or you can use a regular expression. If you use a regular expression applying to a junior role, the employer will likely believe that you copy and paste it from Stack Overflow. So be careful with being extra smart on that. Okay, so we got that. So return 0. What happened, guys, on iteration number 2? What's the value of the accumulator? It's 1, because the accumulator has the value returned by the previous iteration. So on, no, sorry, what 1? No, that's wrong. On iteration 1, we return 0. So now, on iteration 2, the value is still 0. What's the value of the letter? E. What do we return? 0. Wrong. 1. Because E is a vowel, so we increase the counter. Iteration number 3. What's the value of the accumulator? 1, correct. What's the letter? L. What do we return? 1. Iteration number 4. What's the accumulator? 1. The letter? L, correct. And return what? Yes, it's 1. I'm checking if anyone is paying attention apart from Bilal. Iteration number 5, last one. Anyone apart from Bilal, please. He clearly understood how it works. Accumulator is 1. Letter
Oh.
O. Return 2, correct. So the algorithm will return true. I strongly recommend you to create that sort of table. That will massively help you to understand if it works or not. Yeah, does it make sense?
Just one question.
Yep.
I don't where it says if IO includes letter.
Yep.
If I want to see that before, I would think if letter includes.
No, because you already did it on the other way around. You need to see if that list includes our individual letter, left to right.
Sorry?
You need to see, the way you read that is left to right. Does that list, that highlighted list of 5 vowels, does it include that character? Yes or no?
If it's included.
Yeah? That's the way includes works. Includes, it means, is the element on the right included on the left? That's the way it works. You need to get used to it, right? So, even though that should be okay, I'm 81% sure that will work. So let's have a look. Let's have a look. Yes, I'm right, that works. It's not my favorite style. Why? Because, if else, really, in 2019 for these things, the ternary operator, you've been doing training, I'm sure, right, on beginner, the question mark, colon. So with the ternary operator, we can do that. We can simplify this a bit. If that condition is met, then accumulator plus 1, else accumulator. That's it. So what's the question? It's more sexy. Yeah, I'm not done yet. I can make it even more sexy. But yeah, so that to me looks better because it's simpler. And there is another way to improve it a bit more. Maybe you've seen that. When you use this is an arrow function, when you have an arrow function, you can replace the curly brackets with parentheses. Yep. And if you do that, that means that whatever comes next will be automatically returned immediately. So we need to remove that, and then the code is even simpler. Yeah, that's one step further. You don't need to do that. Oh, wait a minute, it didn't work. Oh, that's weird. You return 5, yeah. I return 7, yeah. What's going on? Oh, that could be a problem on the platform, to be honest. No, that's my fault. Sorry. I forgot to say that. Because we are using parentheses, the expression will be immediately returned. And that means we cannot use a semicolon. Yeah, that's wrong. That was the only thing. So it should work now. Here you go. Yeah? So we cannot use semicolons if we return an expression immediately. And the last thing is, because the expression is simple enough, can we put it in one line? Probably we can, right? Even simpler. And that's it. And the very last thing is, again, I mentioned before, I wasn't a big fan of the accumulator because that doesn't give me any feeling about the semantics. So how would you rename it, guys? Count, yeah, count, I like it, yeah. So then it's easier to predict the behavior of the variable. Any questions?
Yeah, so that accumulator could be any value.
Could be any value, could be a number, could be a string, could be a boolean, could be an object.
Average, anything.
Yeah, average, of course, anything. Yeah. So that's a variable that you keep passing to the next iteration. Yep.
And it works the same way regardless of what value it is. So if it's an average, even though accumulator is always the sum.
Yeah, we'll review that this afternoon as part of the board challenge. Cool. So, say it again. Yeah. Yeah. What's up? Yeah, this is on YouTube, so you can capture it afterwards. So, question. Let me see what you did. Kelly using switch. Yeah. That's interesting. That's a completely different approach. One of the reasons why I love intermediate is because on beginner it's hard to be creative, right? Because it's very simple. With intermediate, there are different approaches, and you don't necessarily have to agree or think any of this is better than yours, but it's good to try different perspectives, yeah? And that's a different perspective, of course. So she's using filter, so she'll just keep the vowels, and then at the end, she will just get the length of the array with the vowels. So I find this quite clever, actually. So Bilal did the same thing. Ooh. Katerina, so this is what we explained at the beginning, right? So she's using for let. So she's looping and essentially checking if it's a vowel or not, right? Yeah, even though that's correct, I hope you agree that this requires more efforts, right? And on top of that, please guys, let's pay attention to indentation. Because if we want to do that, actually, let me copy it. If I do, what I'm doing? Yeah, if we do that, and things should complain on the indentation, yeah. So it complains on a few things, but to me the main thing is about indentation. Look, the way we indent these sort of long expressions will be something like that. Yeah, I hope you see it's slightly more readable. But yeah, all good. And then what else we got? Yeah, so look at Edward. So the idea was obviously very interesting, right? He was using a regular expression, but yeah, it didn't work. And yeah, so we'll see in the future how to deal with regular expressions. For Esteban, you see, so he, interesting. He's using filter. He's doing a mix of Kelly and my style, right? Using filter to keep an array with the vowels, but then the criteria is much simpler. Look, that highlighted piece of code replace that. You see? So it's very, very smart. For Ahmed, classic for loop. Index of. Index of is a very old method in JavaScript, which is equivalent to includes. The only difference is index of returns a number with the index of the element. If it's -1, that means the element is not part of the list. Yeah? If it's 0, that means the element is on the first position. If it's 1, that means the element is on the second position. So that's all good. I find includes a bit better here, because we don't care if it's on position 1, 2, or 3, right? We want the Boolean, true or false. But all good apart from that. For Sonia, yes, so again, the classic if with a for loop. And then, yeah, it didn't work for Catherine because that part is wrong. The idea is right, but the problem is vowel counter. What sort of data vowel counter is? String? Wrong. It's an array with individual characters. So what is the loop? We need to iterate to access each individual character, right? That was the main issue. And finally, for Seb, again, I have nothing against that, right? I hope you agree that we can simplify it a bit using includes. That's the only thing, right? Any question, guys? No? Cool. So we got time to do at least one more. Let's do that one. Find last. Yeah, that will be the last question on intermediate today. So we got a sentence. At least we can be a bit better on semantics this time. So we need to find the last word starting with a capital. Interesting. I'm thinking to do something a bit aggressive here. First of all, as usual, argument name. You tell me. Phrase, yeah. Fair enough. We can call it phrase or sentence. Yeah, whatever. And then return as usual. Do you think that's right or wrong? Why wrong, Kelly? The space, correct. So that will return an array of individual characters, S, then E, then another E, then a space. But we don't really want that. We want to get an array of words. So that's why if we pass a space, then we get C, then Bradley, then Cooper, yeah? All right, because now we got an array of words, I want to get the last one being a capital. First of all, I may be tempted to use find. So with find, we can retrieve a word matching a condition. How about what?
How about reduce?
We can use reduce as well, of course. Yeah, we can. So reduce can be used anytime because reduce is like a super complex mechanism. Yeah, but if there is a simpler way, I wouldn't recommend to use reduce. And I think find is a good example. So find. With find, we get the word, and then we specify the condition. So what's the condition? The word needs to start with a capital. How do we know if a word starts with capitals? Word dot to uppercase. What? Say it again. That's correct. Ahmed is right. That will transform the whole word into capitals. So that I don't think.
I think they want to be capitalized.
Capitalized. We want to check the first character of the word. How do we get the first character of a word? Strings are very similar to arrays. If I ask you, how do you get the first element of an array? Correct. So how do you get the first character of a string? Correct. That will return the first character of the array. And then what? How do you check if that's a capital or not?
Not equals to word
Not equals to word
lowercase.
dot to lowercase, like that. You are comparing a character, ABC, with an entire expression.
No, yeah, the square bracket 0.
Correct. That looks better. Only one thing, as you probably know already, I'm not a big fan of the negation in the conditions because I find it harder to read. If it's not equal, I prefer to think in a positive way. So how can we run it like that? What else do we need to change? To uppercase, correct. Yeah, so find a word that is which first character is the same on uppercase. Yeah? Will this work or not?
We just found the first
So Jack got the point. Find will stop as soon as the first word matches the condition. Yeah, let's run it. Let's run it to prove the theory. It doesn't work. Look, return C because it's the first one. Return Bonnie because that's the first one. Return A because that's the first one. I don't want the first one. I want the last one. So how do you get the last one? Ideally, and to be honest, I don't know why that's not part of the standard. We should have something like find last or find right, but that's not part of the standard of JavaScript.
If you, before dot find, you put dot reverse.
I love it, Seb. You dot reverse, whatever was last now is first. Yeah, that's very clever. And if we run it, yeah. It's a very creative way. I like it. Really nice. So, what you did here? Question number 3, I believe. Kelly. Literally the same. You see? It's literally the same. The only difference is Kelly created a variable and then she deal with the variable. Yeah? In my case, I didn't care and I returned it straight away. Yeah? What else? Anyone else? Yeah, we got Katerina. So Katerina, let me try to understand that. So she has an array of words. So you see, it took me a few seconds to understand because of the semantics, because I don't know what I is. If the name was word, for instance, that would have helped me, right? So Katerina, accessing individual words. Look, that's another way to access character of a word. Instead of square brackets, we can use char at. Yeah, that's an alternative, but it's the same thing. So, if right, so she's essentially transforming a word to the same word with the first character in capitals. Yeah? If that's the same as the original word, that means that the word starts with capitals. Yeah, that's true, right? And then, if that's the case, she adds the word to the array of words starting with capitals that is called new array. And because we may have multiple words starting with capital, Katerina eventually returns the last one. Yeah, it's up. I don't have concerns about the style. My main concerns are about the readability. Yeah, because I struggle to understand what array is, what new array is. It doesn't helping me to understand your code. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
So we should use the most meaningful words we can.
Well, of course, because again, the main complexity about code is making sure that your colleagues understand what you did. Yeah. So semantics are the key for success, I believe. Do you want to do the last question, guys? We got 5 minutes. Yes, fantastic. Let's do it. Look, number 5, higher order functions. Very important in JavaScript. That's a bit mind-blowing probably the first time you read it, right? I strongly recommend you to spend 45 minutes of your life watching this video. Again, the most popular in our YouTube channel. Yeah? Because higher order functions are as complex as important. So look at what that means. We got a function. So if we had to deal with that part, it's trivial. We got a function, passing number 3, it returns something, fair enough. But then look, whatever the function returns is another function, and then another function. So in other words, look, this is mind-blowing. The function, what my function change sequence returns? It's another function. And what that function returns? Another one. And that's it. And now let's talk about arguments. Here, this is, for instance, number A, this is number B, and this is number C. So what do we return here? Multiply by, return number A, multiply by number B, multiply by number C, something like that, right? Yeah, that's the way higher order functions work. This is, again, a bit complex, but, you know, it's the way it works. So in reality, let me show you a different way to explain that. So if we need to invoke that, that's the same as doing that. These two structures are equivalent. Maybe that's a bit more readable. Yeah? You invoke a function and you say the value here. And then, but that is it a number? Is this an object? Is it a Boolean? What type of data first is? A what? It's a number? Wrong. First is not a number. It is a function, correct? Because we invoke it. And then when we invoke first, we save the return statement into second. What type of data second is? It's another function, right? And then eventually, what type of data third is? Wrong. It's a number, yes, because third is the eventual result. Yeah? Again, please watch this video and go through the training on higher order functions. All right, so that's the way it works. I'll show you a very sexy way to solve it. That's using classic functions, but now we got arrow functions, right? With the equal, greater than symbol. So with arrow functions, look, you can do that. That's it, one line.
After number C, when you need brackets on it.
No, that's the thing. If you put it, you can do that, that's fine, you can do that. Yeah? But as I mentioned before, you can get rid of the brackets, yeah, and the return, yeah?
When you put it like this, then it makes sense. But when you put it like that,
No, yeah, I'm not actually defending that from a readability point of view. That's a bit weird. I personally prefer that. Why? Because I find it easier to read. That one is what's going on, right? But technically speaking, should be okay. Let's have a look. I missed something. Number A. That's interesting. Didn't work. Number A is defined but never used. Wait a minute. Sorry, I did that wrong actually. So it's like that, right? So return number B, that's the second function that invokes number C, and then eventually we multiply them all. Again, don't try to do that by yourself because that could be hard to read. I'm just trying to show you that technically speaking is possible, but I rather prefer the other alternative. I find this way more readable because higher order functions may be complex enough, so they make it more difficult than they actually are. Does it make sense? Yeah? Let me have a look quickly to your approaches. So that was question number 5. So did anyone manage to solve it? Yes, Kelly, you see? So Kelly is using the nested function nightmare. And then same for Ahmed. Oh, cool. So some of you solve it. So that's great. That's great. Yeah. Now here, just be careful. In that case, we need spaces, Katerina, surrounding the numbers, right? Cool. So that was it from my side, guys. Thank you very much.